Have you ever heard of the Flannan Isles? Or the 3 lighthouse keepers that mysteriously disappeared over 100 years ago to never be found? Flannan Isles Lighthouse is a lighthouse located on Eilean Moor, an island off the coast of Scotland. It is best known for the disappearance of 3 of its lightkeepers in the year 1900, just 1 year after construction of the lighthouse had finished. The island itself was basically unlivable, and construction was no small feat. They built a lighthouse and house for the lighthouse keepers to stay in, along with stairs and railing and railway tracks cemented in concrete. All the materials used had to be shipped up a 45-meter or 148-foot cliff to the top, straight from supply boats, which was no trivial task since the Atlantic was constantly rocking the boats about. The job of lighthouse keeper was mainly given to 3 men: James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, with a 4th rotating man who was spending time on shore. His job was to come in every now and again and rotate out with someone else in order to give them time on shore. The incident. On December 15th, 1900, a steamer that was traveling from America, from Philadelphia to Leith, came across there and found that even though it was really bad weather, for some reason, the lighthouse light was not on. Well, since they weren't stopping there, they documented it in their log. And once they made it to Leith, on December 18th, they reported it to the Northern Lighthouse Board. Now, the relief vessel that was supposed to carry the 4th rotating man out to the island was scheduled to head out on December 20th. But they couldn't due to bad weather. They actually ended up heading out on December 26th. Now, on arrival, the crew of the relief ship, along with the relief light keeper, found some very unusual things, some very peculiar things. First off, the flag staff had no flag up it. And then the provision boxes had been left out for restock out on the landing stage. And even more peculiar, none of the lighthouse staff were there to meet and greet them. Jim Harvey, the captain of the relief boat, attempted to make contact with them by blowing his horn and shooting a flare, but still there was no response. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, was put on shore alone. He found the entrance gate to the compound and the main door both closed, the beds unmade, and the clocks had stopped. Returning back to the landing stage and giving the ship the bad news, he went back up onto the land with the ship's 2nd mate and a seaman. A further search showed that the lamps had been cleaned and refilled. A set of oilskins, which is a type of raincoat for sailors, was found, suggesting that one of the men had went out without his raincoat, which was surprising with how the weather was supposed to have been on the date of the last login from the lightkeepers. The only sign of anything that had gone amiss was an overturned chair. Other than that, there was just no sign of these men anywhere in the lighthouse or anywhere on the island. While investigating the island, they found that everything on the east side of the island seemed just fine, yet everything on the west had been damaged by a storm. A box 108 feet above sea level had actually been broken and its contents thrown all around. Iron railing was bent over, and the iron rails within the concrete for the railway had actually been pulled from the cement. Also, a rock that weighed more than a ton, a boulder that weighed more than a ton, had somehow been displaced. On top of the cliff, turf had actually been ripped away at about 200 feet above sea level. It was ripped away about 33 feet from the cliff's edge. The missing keepers kept their log until about 9 a.m. on December 15th, the same day that the ship from Philadelphia had ridden by there that night. The logs made it very clear that all this damage had happened previous to that day. The Northern Lighthouse Board intensely investigated this, and upon investigation, they found there were some very peculiar log entries into the logbook. On December 12th, Thomas Marshall wrote,
"Severe winds, likes of which I have never seen in 20 years.
He also reported that James Duckett had been
Very quiet.
and that Donald MacArthur had been crying. Now, MacArthur was a veteran mariner who was also known to be a brawler, and the thought of him crying at a storm was very peculiar within itself. Log entries on December 13th stated that the storm was still raging and that all three men had been praying. This was also very puzzling because all three men were very experienced seamen who should have known that they were safe inside a secure structure 150 feet above sea level. Even more peculiar, there had been no reported storms on the 12th, 13th, or 14th of December in the area, which means it either had to be made up for the logbooks or very, very isolated to just that island and that part of the island from the damage that was taken on the island. The investigator noted,
From evidence which I was able to procure, I was satisfied that the men had been on duty up till dinner time on Saturday, the 15th of December, that they had gone down to secure a box in which the mooring ropes, loading ropes, etc., were kept, and which was secured in a crevice in the rock about 110 feet, 34 millimeters, above sea level, and that an extra large sea had rushed up the face of the rock, had gone above them, and coming down with immense force, had swept them completely away. Ha ha ha. I feel like a pirate. Ha ha ha.
sorry. No bodies were ever found, and the explanation given really was just mere speculation. Now, many peculiar theories has popped up about this tragedy since the time that it happened, even going into newspapers around Scotland and such, going as far as to saying that they were kidnapped by a ghost ship, or that pirates took them, even alien abduction. There's another one that says that MacArthur might have went mad because of his peculiar behavior in the logbooks of him crying, that he might have went mad and murdered the other two men and then jumped and committed suicide, or somehow found a way off of the island and ran off to start a new life. There's also another one that says that all three of the men ran off from the island to start a new life, but that one not many people believe because two of the men had wives and children. Now, the more modern explanation is that the island is littered with these deep but narrow gullies called geos, which could actually catch water from particularly massive waves and exploded with extreme force back out, catching people off guard and throwing them into the ocean. Now, according to this version, the most experienced lighthouse keeper would have been tending to his duties in the lighthouse, while the other two were securing stuff for the storm. When the one in the lighthouse realized the danger and ran out to try to warn the other two, or saw the other two thrown into the sea and ran out to help him and got thrown in himself. Which it does turn out that the crevice that was talked about by the investigator is actually in one of these geos, which gives credence to the last theory. And then the guy in the lighthouse, he would have ran out so quickly that he didn't take his rain jacket, and he knocked over the chair, which would also explain both of those. But I don't know. So, what do you think about this peculiar occurrence? Do you think that they were swept out to sea, or some sea monster come up and grab them? Or who knows, maybe the boat from the Philadelphia didn't have such honorable people on board and they had something to do with it, which I've never seen a theory about, but you never know. But I want to know what you think about this peculiar occurrence down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, share this out to all your peculiar friends, and subscribe and hit that little bell button. You know, the one down there with the all notifications. Otherwise, you're not going to know when I upload, because that's just how YouTube is. I know, it's crazy, right? And until next time, keep your eyes peeled for all things peculiar. Do 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 do. I could not talk during this entire one. My mouth was just like that, tripping over my words. I'm sorry about that, guys. I still hope you enjoyed it anyways. Yeah, love y'all.